West Africa Democracy Radio 80... West Africa Democracy Radio 94.9 FM à Dakar.
WADR, promoting dialogue.
It's midday in Dakar, 1 o'clock in Lagos. Good afternoon and many thanks for staying tuned to West Africa, Democracy Radio, broadcasting on 94.9 FM and around the world at wadr.org. Welcome to Newslink. Here are the top stories. At least 60 dead, several missing as devastating floods hit Nigeria's Niger State. Liberian President Bouakai survives rescue operations after terrible aircraft landing at Roberts International Airport. Reaction trails the election of a new president of the African Development Bank.
A unique election by the fact that I would say the underdog was the winner at the end. Unique election because also he won in a very wide margin.
And Togo postpones municipal elections to mid-July amid opposition calls for adequate preparation. Please stay with us for details of these stories and more.
Here is Augustine Coley with Newslink.
Many thanks for joining our broadcast. We begin in Nigeria, where the death toll from the devastating flood that struck Mokwa town in Niger State has risen to over 60, with more than 10 individuals still missing. The floodwaters submerged more than 50 residential houses, many of which were washed away along with their occupants. The torrential rainfall began on Wednesday evening and lasted for several hours in some areas of the state. Imo Edit reports.
In a statement issued on Thursday, the Acting Director General of the Niger State Emergency Management Agency, NSEMA, Ibrahim Husseini, confirmed that a disaster struck communities of Tifin Maza and Angoua Hausawa in Mokwa local government area during heavy rainfall of high intensity that lasted for several hours. The floodwaters submerged and washed away over 50 residential houses along with their occupants, resulting in significant casualties and property loss. The statement revealed that 25 bodies have so far been recovered, while more than 10 people are still missing. However, there were 3 survivors, a woman and her 2 children, who were receiving medical treatment for injuries and trauma at the Mokwa General Hospital. In response to the situation, NSEMA, in collaboration with Mokwa Local Government Authority, local divers and courageous volunteers, launched immediate search and rescue operations to find survivors and recover bodies. The Niger State Emergency Management Agency has assured the public of continued efforts to provide support and relief to the affected families and communities.
Imo Edit fight that report. In Liberia, a private aircraft carrying President Joseph Boakai and his delegation experienced a near disaster while landing at the Roberts International Airport. The incident took place on Thursday night as the president and his team returned from the 50th anniversary celebrations of the Economic Community of West African States, ECOWAS. Reports indicate that one of the aircraft's tires burst upon landing, which led to a precautionary halt on the runway. WADR's Monrovia correspondent Ibrahim Parker reports.
This alarming incident has raised safety concerns among Liberians regarding the security of their leader and other diplomats who frequently use Roberts International Airport. The incident not only caused delays, but also led to the diversion of several aircraft scheduled to land at the airport. The management of the airport has publicly acknowledged the incident, confirming that the aircraft tire burst was indeed caused by the poor condition of the runway, which is riddled with potholes. While taking full responsibility of the situation, the airport authorities extended apologies to President Bouaka and his entourage, assuring the public that they are prioritizing safety enhancements. Despite this uncertain experience, President Bouaka used the occasion to address his citizens about his participation in the ECOWAS 50th anniversary celebrations.
Liberia certainly going to ECOWAS to attend. We were the first country that they intervened in our conflict in a very big way. So we are very grateful. ECOWAS have done extremely well.
The Liberian leader also emphasized the importance of empowering Africa's youth.
60% of ECOWAS are youth. And so if we are going to lead youth, it is important that we train them. We give them vocational training. We give them access to good quality education.
As Liberia reflects on this close call, there is a high expectation that swift action will be taken to enhance the safety at the Roberts International Airport to ensure the well-being of all who travel to do it. For Newslink on WADR, Abraham Parker, Monrovia.
Senegalese Prime Minister Ousmane Sonko is currently in the Ivorian capital Abidjan on a 3-day official visit. His visit is part of the relaunch of bilateral cooperation between Dakar and Abidjan. Ousmane Sonko was received by his Ivorian counterpart Robert Begri on Thursday evening. He also met with the new African Development Bank President Sidi Outa. This is the second regional trip by the Senegalese head of government in May following his recent visit to Burkina Faso. During such a visit, he helped strengthen bilateral cooperation, particularly on the free movement of goods via the port of Dakar and the establishment of a representation of the Burkina Faso Chamber of Commerce and Industry in Senegal, among other developments.
More stories coming up on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
To some political developments, the municipal elections in Togo have been rescheduled to May-July this year. This decision was communicated in a decree adopted by the President of the National Council, Faure Gnassingbé. In conjunction with this change, the Independent National Electoral Commission announced the suspension of a recent decree that increased the number of municipal councillors and deputy mayors that are to be elected. Christopher Aticho completes the story.
A new decree signed by the President of the Council, Faure Gnassingbé, stated that municipal elections will be held on July 17. The decree specifies that members of the Togolese Armed Forces, Security Forces, Paramilitary Forces and the Operational Reserve, who are called upon to ensure the security of voters and electoral operations on Election Day, are authorized to cast their vote on Monday, July 14, which is 72 hours before the official election date. The election campaign will run from midnight on July 1 to 11:59 p.m. on July 15. Additionally, the recently adopted decree that aimed to increase the number of municipal councillors has been suspended. The decision was made by the Independent National Electoral Commission, (SENI). As a result, the number of councillors to be elected will remain the same as during the 2019 municipal elections, totaling 1,527. The President has also announced that the deadline for submitting application files, initially set for Thursday, May 29, 2025, has been extended to Sunday, June 1, 2025 at 11:59 p.m. It is important to note that the recent calls from opposition members have requested the postponement of the municipal elections to allow for better preparation.
Christopher Aticho voiced that report fighting by our Lomé correspondent Sylvie Widraogo. Still in Togo, the National Alliance for Change, ANC party, is demanding the release of activist Aaron, whose real name is Nasesi Esowe Tichala. They are calling on the ruling government to address its concerning shift towards authoritarianism. Iram, also an artist, was arrested by state security on the night of May 26 in Lomé. His arrest marks another case of young people in Togo being targeted for their outspoken views against the government. Abdullahi Hassan has the details.
Activist Amron, like many others, has expressed his disgust with President Foya Singbe's poor governance over the past 20 years and demonstrated his rejection of the Fifth Republic. Before his arrest, he described Singbe's rule as a straitjacket imposed by the RPT UNIR regime on the sovereign Togolese people who have not been consulted on these matters. His arrest mirrors the earlier detention of young activist Afeksho, who remains imprisoned despite widespread calls for his release. In reaction to these situations, the opposition National Alliance for Change ANC party is demanding the release of Amron along with all political prisoners currently held in various detention facilities across the country. In a press statement issued on Thursday, May 29, the ANC cautioned the ruling party, Union for the Republic, that the Togolese people can no longer tolerate police violence, brutality, denial of justice, and abuses reminiscent of another era. The opposition party urges the ruling government, along with all political actors, civil society organizations, and key forces within the Togolese nation, including the defense and security forces, to reflect on the critical message shared by the Conference of Bishops of Togo (CET) on May 26, 2025.
Abdullahi Hassan with that report. Crossing over to the Gambia, where the National Assembly Committee, which is investigating the sales of assets belonging to former President Yahya Jammeh, has summoned several key individuals for questioning. The committee has a mandate of 120 days and is scheduled to begin public hearings in early July this year. The investigation focuses on the handling, legality, and transparency of the assets transactions, and recommendations are expected to be made based on the committee's findings. Sankule Janko completes the story.
According to the media sources, the identified witnesses include former Attorney General and Minister of Justice Abubakar Tambedu, former High Court Sheriff Tabali, and Alhaji Mamadi Kurang, former Executive Secretary of the Janneh Commission, who has confirmed his summon in a social media post. The committee is tasked with examining the list of assets identified by the Janneh Commission. It will determine which assets were sold, transferred, or otherwise disposed of, as well as the legal and administrative processes used in these sales and the authority under which they occurred. Additionally, the committee will assess the valuation, pricing, and procurement methods used to establish asset values and will identify and profile the purchasers of these assets to evaluate whether proper procedures were followed. Furthermore, the committee will review the management and accounting of the proceeds generated from the asset sales and verify whether the funds were properly disposed into public accounts. It has the authority to recommend that the Inspector General of Police open investigations against any individual or entity if discrepancies or fraudulent activities are discovered during the inquiry. This investigation aims to reveal corruption, conflicts of interest, and a lack of due process in the sale of assets belonging to former President Yahya Jammeh, who has been in exile since 2017. As a reminder, several young protesters were arrested during demonstrations in which they were demanding accountability for the sale of the ex-president's assets. In response to these demands, current President Adama Barrow, in a recent state address, promised to implement the findings from investigations that would be conducted by the Office of the Auditor General and the National Assembly regarding the sales of his predecessor's assets.
Sankule Janko fight that report. You are still listening to Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Here is a reminder of our top stories. At least 60 dead, several missing as devastating floods hit Nigeria's Niger state. Liberian President Boakai survives rescue operations after terrible aircraft landing at Rabat's International Airport. Togo postpones municipal elections to mid-July amid opposition calls for adequate preparation. Still ahead in the news, reaction trails the election of a new president of the African Development Bank. We also have guest interview and sports news. Please stay with us.
Fresh and breaking news all the time. Hear it first as the news breaks, only on West Africa Democracy Radio. Newslink continues.
Many thanks for staying with us. We're streaming live on YouTube at WADR News and on Facebook, WADR English Service. Let's take you to Guinea now, where tensions are rising between the state authorities and the UAE mining company known as Guinean Alumina Corporation, GAC. The stalemate revolves around the ongoing construction of a refinery out of the country. Recently, Guinean authorities ordered a halt to bauxite exports from the Bokeh mine operated by GAC. This situation follows a statement from General Amara Kamara, the official spokesperson for the Guinean presidency, who highlighted a breach of contractual commitments by the mining company. Here is an extract of General Amara Kamara's statement.
GAC, in accordance with its basic agreement, was supposed to develop a refinery here in Guinea. 20 years later, no refinery has been built. In relation to its commitments, nothing. Our bauxite is still being processed. A refinery that was supposed to be built in Guinea has been built elsewhere. That is where our bauxite is refined. There is no Guinean working there. This is our land. When you look at the tax conditions that were granted to GAC to allow for the development of that refinery, it is extraordinary. A formal notice has been sent to GAC. The notice is ongoing. In the end, the state will take its responsibilities. But from now on, no one will take advantage of Guinea for our resources, especially not on our own land.
General Amara Kamara is the official spokesperson for the Guinean presidency. However, the UAE mining company, Guinean Alumina Corporation, denies any breach of its contractual obligations and, in turn, accuses the Guinean government of having implemented measures since October 2024 that violate the Republic of Guinea's contractual and international commitments. The company also calls for negotiations to reach a consensus. Elsewhere, Mauritania's former Minister of Economy, Sidi Outal, is now the new president of the African Development Bank. He was elected to the position during the 60th annual meetings of the AFDB, which concluded on Thursday in the Ivorian capital, Abidjan. Sidi Outal succeeds Akiwumin Adesina of Nigeria, who led the institution for a decade, characterized by high visibility and significant structural reforms. However, Outal's election comes at a crucial time as the United States government is considering to withdraw its support for the Pan-African financial institution in early 2026. This raises an important question about how can the African Development Bank strengthen its role in the absence of U.S. government support. In response to this question, Professor Fallou Sam, an economist and president of the African Trade Policy Institute, discusses the issue with WADR.
Le premier élément, donc, c'est d'équilibrer ou de rééquilibrer.
The first step is to balance or rebalance the AFDB's capital by introducing the diaspora. In 2024, remittances from foreigners and official development assistance will have significantly exceeded this figure. Foreign investment and official development assistance are what give the diaspora its weight. There is a reality that exists, so it should be reflected in the leading African bank, which is currently in its current form and situation. Even with the statistics, fortunately, we have an umbrella called ZLICAF. We have other sectorial umbrellas, particularly on the financial front, which will mean that we will suffer less this time and that it will be truly different. The World Trade Organization wants to ensure that there is more predictability and more maturity in this regard. So the good news here is also that we have a protocol dedicated to women and youth, who are the main actors in intra-African trade, particularly at the informal level, with what the African Development Bank and even the World Bank call border traders, who were the foundation of the 4FA and constitute the essence of the 4FA.
Professor Fallou Sam is the president of the African Trade Policy Institute.
Politics, analysis on major news, social matters, and all. This is A Guest.
Our guest interview this afternoon focuses on the election of Mauritania's former Minister of Economy, Sidi Outal, as the new president of the African Development Bank, who was elected to the position during the 60th annual meetings of the AFDB, which concluded on Thursday in the Ivorian capital, Abidjan. Our guest is Professor Fallou Sam, an economist and president of the African Trade Policy Institute.
I guess this is kind of a unique election. A unique election by the fact that I would say the underdog was the winner at the end. Unique election because also not only he won, but he was not in the, I would say, favorites, but he won in a very wide margin. And this was not expected. How do you explain this is that this election is unique by the context. This is a context of Africa. But this election was, I would say, shadowed or overshadowed by the geopolitics. Number one, the Donald Trump policy on public assistance, the policy also on the tariff and duties, and all of those have created kind of turmoil whereby people, whether African and non-African, within the bank and outside the bank, are looking for solution for a sustainable solution that would really pave the way for a more peaceful environment.
You talk about this current president being the underdog candidate before his election. Why did you term him as the underdog candidate?
I mean, it wasn't in the pronostic. It wasn't in the pronostic because, Adesina was from West Africa. He's from West Africa. Of course, he's from Mauritania, which is also part of the Arabic countries. And Mauritania also is not, quote-unquote, that kind of big countries and all of those. I mean, we expected South Africa, even maybe Senegal or Zambia, all the literature that even in the media were really in favor of all of those, but rarely. But it had very intrinsic qualities that at the end of the day, beyond and apart from the geopolitics, I mean, also favored him because he was a leader in the Wadr Bank. He made very substantive progress and achievements, and that also was very instrumental in getting the victory.
How do you think the new administration can strengthen the independence of the African Development Bank and made plans by the U.S. government to withdraw its support from the African Development Bank?
Yeah, number one, and in a general sense, we need to count on our own forces. I mean, Donald Trump was elected to make America first, to make America great again. We need to make Africa great again. I mean, we can share the same MAGA symbol and acronym in this context. So when we have this, and the good news is that we have this new generation, we have the human capital, we have those new leaders like the new President Outal, who work very well in the Arab countries, and is very well knowledgeable in terms of raising money, attracting funds, and all of those venture capital and all of those capitalistic instruments. So we can do that. And the good news also, as I mentioned earlier, is that now with the AFCFTA, Africa is really doing a lot of progress in terms of trade. And as you know, trade is conducive to poverty reduction, to really growth, and to make sure, especially for women and youth, to make sure that we have rejuvenation of our population, and that will make sure that we really do the progress that we want in terms of Africa.
Professor Falu Sam is an economist and president of the African Trade Policy Institute. And here comes Christopher Aticho with the latest in the world of sports. Good afternoon, Chris.
Augustine, good afternoon. How you doing?
I'm pretty well seated. Tell us what's happening in the world of sports this afternoon.
Well, it's a Friday today and a lot of actions. Very interesting ones will be happening tomorrow, and we're here to actually serve a very wonderful audience with it. So the stage is set for a thrilling football spectacle as the Super Eagles of Nigeria takes on the Reggae Boys of Jamaica in the finals of the Unity Cup 2025. You remember the Unity Cup? The highly anticipated clash will unfold at the G-Tech Community Stadium in Brentford, London on Saturday, May 31, with kickoff scheduled at 7:45 p.m. The grand finale brings together two dynamic footballing nations representing the Africa and the Caribbean diaspora, promising a night of electrifying action, cultural display, and sporting excellence. Jamaica booked their spot in the final after crashing out 3-2 victory over rival Trinidad and Tobago. And then Ghana also lost to Nigeria in 2-1 encounter in what was also dubbed as Jollof Derby. But aside the Unity Cup, also tomorrow is the grand finale of the UEFA Champions League. The 2024-2025 UEFA Champions League final between Paris and Inter Milan will also take place tomorrow at Munich Football Arena. So Inter were the first side to actually book their place in the decider courtesy with an incredible 7-0 aggregate victory over Barcelona in the semi-finals. And then the following night, Paris Saint-Germain also thrashed out Arsenal 3-1 aggregate on that particular encounter. And interestingly, Augustine, it is worth noting that tomorrow's encounter will be the 70th season for Europe's elite club competition and the 33rd since it was renamed UEFA Champions League. And it is important to note or highlight again that the European football calendar returns to Munich for the first time since 2012 when Chelsea defied home advantage side to beat Bayern Munich on penalty.
So who are you going for in the UEFA Champions League finals tomorrow?
I'll give my support to Inter because I'm an Inter boy.
I thought you are a sportsman, you'll be independent. Anyway, that's it. Thank you, Christopher Aticho. With that, we've come to the end of this edition of Newslink here on West Africa Democracy Radio, broadcasting from Dakar, Senegal. Thank you for listening, and many thanks to Mustafa Sek and Sheikh Njai for the technical support. To interact with us via our social media platforms, X, Instagram at WADR English, and on Facebook, WADR English service. By 1 p.m., Demba Amaan will bring you the news in French, which is Info Chez vous. I am Augustine Cully. Good afternoon.
And many thanks to you for listening to Newslink via Hot 104.3 FM, New Me FM 94.0.